dedicated to each and every one of you who appreciate a great glass of wine. You know what I mean?
Monday. Let's raise a glass to the beginning of another week. It's time to unscrew, uncork, or saber a bottle, and let's begin exploring the wine glass. Today, I am sharing a wonderful trade tasting I attended in New York City. The Charming Taste of Europe is a project that brings together the wine from Italy and France, as well as fresh fruit from Greece. The presentation was hosted by Susannah Gold of Vigneto Communications and Abruzzo brand ambassador. The event was held at Il Gattapardo Restaurant in mid-December. The event space is beautiful, but the acoustics leave a bit to be desired. So the sound quality of this episode is not stellar, but I promise it is worthy of your time to listen. Before we get to the podcast, I'd like to wish everyone a very happy new year. Let's raise a glass as a toast to the future, a toast to the past, and a toast to our friends that are far and near. May the best day of your past be the worst day of your future. Sláinte! Hey everybody, I'm Lori Budd, a UC Davis winemaking program, someday service, champagne specialist, and WSET Level 2 graduate. You can find Exploring the Wine Glass on all the socials, as well as your favorite podcast catchers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to swipe, subscribe, rate, and review. I promise I'll never tell you what to drink, but I'll always share what's in my glass.
Welcome. This tasting is called the Charming Taste of Europe. The Charming Taste of Europe is a consortium of two wine regions, so the wines of Abruzzo and the sweet wines of Bordeaux, and then two groups of fruit producers who make kiwi and cherries, who are from Greece. I will not be talking about cherries or kiwi, but that is the sort of genesis of the Charming Taste of Europe. I like this map other than the fact that Puglia is spelled wrong, just because it shows you where Abruzzo is. I know, I'm sorry, I just have to point that out. But I really like it. I usually try to hide the Puglia, but you can't really hide Puglia here if you want to see Abruzzo. So I like this map because it shows you where Abruzzo is, so in central Italy. And Abruzzo, I really do feel this, and it's not because I'm doing this presentation, it's such an unsung region in terms of its beauty and food and wine and everything related to it. So I don't know, sorry. Okay, so this is another map of Abruzzo, just so you see. This is, you can see the Gran Sasso, you can see the Maiella mountain over here, and then you see how close it is to the Adriatic Sea. So when you think of Abruzzo, it's kind of these long stripes. So there's the stripe just near the coast, then there's this middle coastal band, then there's this middle band, and then there's the mountains, right? So the central Apennines that run right down Abruzzo. And in terms of history, it's a very, very old region. So it's, we have texts from Pliny the Elder, and they've had wine production for many, many years. Wine production started on the coast, and then it moved up towards it started in the mountains, and then it moved down towards the coast. And the most significant part of Abruzzo agriculture is winemaking. So grape growing, and they make about 3.5 million hectoliters each year, and of that, 80% is DOC. I'm not going to be talking about the DOCGs too much today in Abruzzo. I'm really just talking about the DOC wines, okay? Because that's the consortium that I'm representing. So just a kind of facts and figures, there are around 200 private wineries in Abruzzo. There are 40 co-ops. Cooperatives are very important in the landscape of viticulture in Abruzzo. You may know that cooperatives account for 55% of Italian viticulture in general. So people don't talk about co-ops a lot, but it's a huge part of Italian viticulture. So 55% within Italy in general, and 40 co-ops in Abruzzo. So there are 32 in the Chieti province. There are 4 provinces in Abruzzo. There are 2 DOCGs in this area. One is Montepulciano d'Abruzzo Colline Terramane, and the other is a recent one. It's called Tulum Oltiere Tolesi. And then there are 7 DOCs, which we'll be talking about, a few of them today, not all of them, and then 7 IGT wines. And okay, so let's talk about the geography here. So there are 2 regions. So there's the mountains, and it has, at the Apennines' highest peak is in Abruzzo. in the Gran Sasso, and 65% of the region is mountainous. There's no other region in Europe that is like Abruzzo. 30% of the territory is natural parks. I know Pat wants to go hiking there. We'll definitely send you there in one way or another. I get somebody who'd give you all that information. And then there's the Adriatic Sea. So you really have everything here in Abruzzo. And Luca Venturelli, who all of you know, who works for Colangelo, always talks about how he or his friends were skiing and looking at the Mediterranean, at the Adriatic when they were skiing, which is just an amazing idea. You could be skiing in the mountains and looking at the Adriatic. So the climate here is mild, thanks to this Adriatic, facing the Adriatic side. Of course, it gets cooler and more continental as we go up into the Apennines. There's lots of good rainfall, lots of sunshine, and most of the area has this kind of mild climate because a lot of the viticulture is done close to the coast. But there are these very imposing mountains that we know about, the Gran Sasso and the Maiella mountain region. Okay, so before we talk about this, now we're going to try and see if we can get Davide, who is from the Wines of Abruzzo Consortium, on Zoom.
Welcome everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. I'm sorry that I'm not in New York now, but I hope to come back to the US at the beginning of February. My name is Davide Acerra, and I work for the Consortium for the Protection of Abruzzo Wines. That is the main organization in Abruzzo, which protects and promotes the wines from my region. The Consortium is a non-profit association founded in 2002 and represents more or less than 70% of the producers from our region. Abruzzo, it's a small region. We are on the center south of Italy on the Atlantic coast, but it's a small region, but we represent a big wine region because Abruzzo is the fifth region for the production of wines in Italy. So we have a great history about the wine in our region that start from the Romans that spoke about the high quality of the wines from our region. During this long time, many things are changing, and Abruzzo's wine growing and wine producing in the last, particularly in the last 10 years, has seen a great development. This is for many reasons, but first of all, for the decision to focus on native grape varieties, like the little selection that you are tasting today, and also because we had a new generation of producers who have valorized the territory, and they represent a new hope of the wines from Abruzzo. And also because there is no region in Europe like Abruzzo where more than 30% of the territory is protected by many national parks, and we have 4 parks and about 68 natural reserves and protected areas. So we have an incredible biodiversity. And I hope that you can come to Abruzzo as soon as possible in the future and see our region with your eyes. Because we have an incredible territory with the sea, big mountains, waterful rivers, ancient villages. And in this territory, the vineyards has found the best condition for the growth of great quality grapes. I hope that you can enjoy our wines, and what I can say today. You are tasting our main DOC. You are. I think that you are starting with Trebbiano and Pecorino, that are our white indigenous grape, and followed by Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo is our rosé wine. Is the wine of the heart for Abruzzo people. We love very much this wine, and followed by Montebuccione Abruzzo, of course. That is our main DOC, is the wine of the region. That we are known for this wine, and I hope that you can enjoy. So, good tasting, and hope that you meet soon as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Davide. So, I just wanted to mention that there are, as I said, 4 provinces, and the largest is Chieti, which accounts for 75% of the vineyards and 83% of the production. And there's Pescara and Teramo and L'Aquila. So 4 provinces. As I mentioned before, 36,000 hectares of vineyards, and Montepulciano, we know, is the largest planted grape in Abruzzo, and around 17,000 hectares. And then followed by Trebbiano, then Pecorino, Costantini, Cocciola, and Montonico. And what I love about Abruzzo is all of these indigenous varieties. You never see Cabernet or Merlot or anything like that. Not that there's anything wrong with Cabernet or Merlot. Please don't get me wrong, I love Cabernet and Merlot, but in Italy I like to drink wines made from native grapes. So I love this photo. This is called the Trabocchi, and these are these fishing nets that are along the coast. And it's this famous 33-mile stretch of beach which runs from Ortona to Vasto, which is at the bottom of Abruzzo, and it's the name of these fishing nets. So just really beautiful. And I took the train all the way down the coast and saw these Trabocchi. Did you do the same? Yeah, it's really interesting. And actually someone here is from Abruzzo. He is from Abruzzo, so we have a local representative, which is great. And I have this slide just to show you where Ortona is and then Vasto at the bottom. So that's what's called the Trabocchi coast. Okay, so trellising and Abruzzo is all, well, not all, but widely the Abruzzo pergola. 80% of the vineyards are done that way. Then there's some cordon trained or squared cordon. And of course some Guyot. Gianni Masciarelli brought Guyot to Abruzzo. Here we are, again, another photo just to see Gran Sasso, the Maella, Pescara, all these beautiful places. Oh, and this slide, the reason I have this slide in is, see all those, the Sangro, the Pescara, those are all rivers. So not only does Abruzzo have mountains, the sea, they also have enormous amounts of rivers and water sources, which is also really interesting. So the first grape that you're tasting, the first one you're tasting, is made from Quecodino. Quecodino was almost extinct in the 20th century, but now there are significant plantings both in Le Marche and Abruzzo. It's a low-yielding grape, but it's pretty resistant to fungal diseases, and it does really well at altitude. It's a really lovely structured wine, and the one that you're tasting is Podere Costantini, Antonio, and it's a really historic winery in this region, which was started in 1910, and they're located between the Gran Sasso and the sea, so they have this kind of climate cradle, in their vineyards, and they are located in the province of Pescara. And the family still works the land. They have many lines of wine, so it's a pretty big winery. They're a significant producer, and this is, of course, a member of the family, which is why I have this photo. So that's the first wine in your glass, the Quecodino. And Abruzzo DOC Pecorino Superiore, this is 2020. And it's 100% Pecorino, it's hand-harvested, selected grapes. The alcohol is not low for a white wine. I'm sure you noticed that when you were tasting it. It's 13.5. And the soils here are what they call, mixed soils. There is impasto misto, which is like different elements in the soils, including some clay. And this particular wine rests on its fine leaves for 4 to 5 months. I don't know if you get that. I haven't tasted it today yet, but you get that kind of textural feeling, I would imagine. So this is the first wine. The second wine that we'll be tasting, and I'm just going to get through this too, and then we'll have our pasta, is Trebbiano d'Abruzzo, so the grape. It's a grape variety that dates back to the 16th century, and it's been talked about for many years. It's a medium to late harvest grape. Trebbiano d'Abruzzo has great acidity. It's very delicate. So many people have tended to kind of, dismiss Trebbiano as a grape variety, but Trebbiano d'Abruzzo I think is lovely. I see Charles nodding. I think you feel the same way about Trebbiano d'Abruzzo. And the Trebbiano d'Abruzzo DOC covers the same area as the Montepulciano DOC, but not the western part of Abruzzo. So to be a Trebbiano d'Abruzzo DOC, you can be a blend of Trebbiano d'Abruzzo and or Trebbiano Toscano. So the wine that you're tasting though is the second wine that you're tasting is 100% Trebbiano d'Abruzzo. Yeah, I think it's superior, it is, but they definitely think it is. So I think about that we can be sure. And what I really love about this particular comment about Trebbiano d'Abruzzo is it can be grown in hilly or plateau soils, but not above an altitude of 500 meters above sea level, or 600 meters above sea level if the exposure is to the south, which is very particular. I mean, I've looked at a lot of denominations and the rules, and I just find that very particular. So they pay a lot of attention to their Trebbiano d'Abruzzo. So I also love this slide because look at that. You're up in this vineyard, and there is the sea right in front of you. So really lovely region. So everyone, I'm sure, knows Tenute Agricole Masciarelli, very, very famous producer from Abruzzo. So Gianni Masciarelli founded the winery in 1981. He had a passion for wine, which he honed when he was a kid, in vineyards with his grandfather, Umberto. He was very innovative. He spent a summer in Champagne. He fell in love with French varieties and French winemaking, and he brought both French oak barrels to Abruzzo. He also brought Guyot and many traditions. And unfortunately, Gianni passed away in 2008. He was only 52. Yeah, he's a nice man. I had met him too. But he was pretty young. He was only 52. But the winery continues. It's run by his wife, Marina Cevic, and their daughter, Miriam Lee. And they have about 60 parcels. They're a very, very big winery here in Abruzzo. And welcome. I'm happy you're both here. Don't worry. I just started recently. Hello. So there's a lot of biodiversity in their fields, and but their parcels are so big that they've got kind of that natural protection because of the size of their parcels. So Masciarelli is a really, really, really well-known producer here who's been credited with a lot of changes all over Abruzzo. So the wine that you're tasting is the line that's dedicated to his wife, Marina, and it's a Trebbiano d'Abruzzo DOC Reserva. And this is 100% Trebbiano d'Abruzzo, and it's 14.5 alcohol. They are located in the Chieti province. Their trellising system, as I had mentioned, is Pergola Abruzzese. They farm sustainably. And the vineyards are pretty high up, so they're at 750 feet to 1,070. And this does ferment in wood, which I'm sure you taste. And then it spells 12 months in French oak and then 12 more months in the barrel. So you're tasting a 2020 and a 2019. So 2020, it was apparently a beautiful vintage here in Abruzzo, mild winter, regular spring and summer, which is what you want, of course. And then, it had a little bit of falling off, but, apparently it was a really great vintage. 2019 was a more complicated vintage. It had cold and rainy weather in April and May, and then it also had some problems in July. But it picked up in September and October, and we know really the vintage is made in September, how things work out. So these are the two vintages that you're tasting, and we're going to be tasting some other wines from these 2 years, which is why I just wanted to mention something about it. I have to say, there is no Talamonti Rosé, so you're going to be tasting the other rosé from Valori. So, as I mentioned, I don't have the Talamonti wine today with us, but I do have a wonderful Cerasuolo from Valori, and we have our first Montepulciano. So Montepulciano is the second most widely planted grape in Italy. The most widely planted red grape, second most widely planted red grape. Do we know what the first most widely planted red grape is? Sangiovese. We all passed. Okay. So Montepulciano is a late ripening grape. It brings a lot of color and tannin and alcohol and acidity, and as we know, it can produce either easy drinking wines or ones to lay down. So a lot of variation among the wines that you get from this great grape variety. And some of the aromas that you know, black and red fruit, mineral, spice, tar, sometimes meaty. Sometimes I find that minerality and herbal notes in Montepulciano as well. So, the first wine that your third wine is a Cerasuolo d'Abruzzo DOC. So this is a DOC that was created in 2010. It's a Rosato wine. The DOC was created in 2010, but this is a historic type of wine made in Abruzzo. It's not a wine that they've been making because rosé is a trend. They've always made Cerasuolo. It's beautiful. Oh, that's great. I'm really happy to hear that. So as we know, to make a rosato in this way, it's a short skin maceration, usually around 24 hours. But Cerasuolo, if you look at the color of this Cerasuolo, it's kind of a bigger, more structured wine than many of the rosés, certainly. But even than some of the other rosato wines, I'm thinking of Chiaretto, from Valtenesi or from the Baldolino area, or even some rosés from Puglia can be very, very structured. But this one is a kind of a nice balance. I think it's just a beautiful color. And this wine is being served chilled. You could also serve it not chilled, but I think it's better chilled. So that's why it's chilled. And this is not from Talamonti, so I'm skipping over that. This wine that you're tasting is from Valori. So this is Luigi Valori. So apparently Luigi Valori is a former famous soccer star from Ascoli Piceno, who in the 1970s played for Ascoli in the Serie A. And when his football career was over, his soccer career was over, he dedicated himself to winemaking. So they are actually organically certified, and this is something that I wanted to talk about too. So in Abruzzo, not only do we have white rosatos and red wines, we also have a number of organic producers, and the next two wines that we're tasting are both organic, certified organic, which we know in Italy is hard because it takes at least 3 years to become certified. So they have 14 hectares of vineyards here. Luigi Valori, he started the winery in 1996, and Gianni Masciarelli was a real influence on Valori. So much so, in fact, that this wine, the Valori wines, are distributed by the Masciarelli group. They have a distribution. And interestingly, the grapes here are grown on sandy soils. So that's the first winery that we've seen that grows their grapes in sandy soils. So the wine itself is 100% Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. The vineyards are 300 meters above sea level. As I said, 24-hour skin contact. This is Guyot trellising. They haven't obviously clipped the top of the Guyot as we see here, and they are organically certified. So the second wine that you'll be tasting, the fourth wine is Montepulciano d'Abruzzo DOC. The DOC was awarded to Montepulciano in 1968, so they celebrated their 50th year in 2018. Most of the production, not 100%, but a lot of it is in the Chieti province. And you can make a wine that's a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo DOC that includes up to 50% of other red varieties. Many people, though, just use 100% Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. And there are these 5 subzones, which we will see a map of, and these different subzones that people who make these wines are allowed to put on their labels. Reserve wines must age 24 months, 9 of which in the barrel, and we will be tasting some of those today. So I wanted to show you this photo. So you can see those are the subzones. So as you see Pescara and then Chieti, the larger province, and Teramo above, and Aquila. So those are the different the subzones if they were overlaid. And then the fourth wine is by Francesco Cirelli. Francesco Cirelli is kind of a cult figure in Abruzzo. He's making his wines in amphora. People talk him up a lot. He's got a bunch of different projects going. He works with his wife Michela. He bought this property in 2003. And his grandparents had owned the land, and he was kind of fascinated by that. He works biodynamically. He does crop rotation on his field. So one year he plants fruit, the next year he plants legumes, the year after that he plants cereals. So he's very, very interesting winemaker and kind of his winemaking philosophy. They also have olive trees, and they are, of course, near a natural preserve, which, as Davide said, they're about 60 or 68. I think he said 68 in Abruzzo, so it's not so hard to be close to a nature preserve. So this is Francesco Cirelli, and these are his amphora. And he has them made in Tuscany. So Impruneta is really famous for the terracotta that they make there, and that's where Francesco Cirelli has his amphora made. He has these 800-liter capacity, but they have a stainless steel closure, which of course they didn't, in the Roman times, but he makes them that way. And he does the whole 9 yards with biodynamic viticulture. So, the cow horn manure planted at, the right time of the year. He has animals grazing on his property. And I took this picture, which to me looks like, Leonardo or something, but it's a real picture of these sheep that are grazing on his farm. And the wine that you're tasting is a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. It's a 2019. It's organically certified. He plants Guyot, and his soils are clay and limestone. And this is, of course, done in stainless steel aging and the amphora too. And of course, he uses indigenous yeast.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Looking to be in the know about Dracaena wines? Want to be the first to know about our new releases and special offers? All you need to do is sign up for our newsletter. There is no commitment necessary, and I promise you we won't spam your mailbox with loads of messages. Need another reason to sign up? Quite possibly the best reason? You'll immediately get a discount code for 10% off your first purchase and be privy to newsletter-only discounts. Let Dracaena Wines turn your moments into great memories. Visit our website, www.dracaenawines.com, or use the link in show notes to sign up. It will take you less than a minute, but the rewards will last a lifetime.
Sweet wines of Bordeaux. I'm going to start with one, and then I'm going to pass over to Gino, who's going to talk about the winery that he represents. So, wine number 5 is from Cantina Infana. It's a cooperative, so I'm really happy that we have an example of a cooperative in our tasting today. And this cooperative was founded in 1958. As I mentioned at the very start of my presentation, there are about 40 co-ops in Abruzzo. 32 of them are in the Chieti province. So this was created, mainly small family businesses. They have together, so there are 500 vignerons, viticulturists, and they have about 1,000 hectares. So, a long extension of vineyards. And they are between the Maiella Mountains and the Costa of Trabocchi. Remember those fishing nets that I showed you? And one really wonderful thing is they're very focused on sustainability. And from October of 2020, all the energy that they use in their winemaking is from renewable sources. So I think that's pretty impressive. And they are the largest producer of this indigenous grape, which unfortunately we're not tasting today, but I just want to mention because I like to pronounce it, Cococciola, which is from this area, which I just think is so fun, Cococciola. And they also have this really interesting tower that they created in the 1960s as their headquarters. And they created this tower that works through gravity, which, as we know, is the way a lot of wineries now work, but they have been doing this since the 1960s. And they're about to merge with another co-op. So this is a wine that we're tasting that's from a co-op, the only one I think in our flight today. And it's a Montepulciano d'Abruzzo Riserva. It's called Rubesto, and it's 2017, and it's 100% Montepulciano, and it comes from their kind of the best of their best, areas, and it's picked, of course, they have a team of agronomists, as co-ops usually do, clay soils, and as you will see in the glass, this spends a bunch of time in oak, which you can certainly taste, and then some more time in the bottle. But I think it's a really nice expression of Montepulciano, and what we will be tasting with our soup, which we will be eating in a minute, I think. And the last winery is Podere Castorani, and I have this little slide, but since we have someone who can actually speak with authority, let's have him speak about it. I don't have to read my slide.
Is that what it is?
Io Trente.
That's interesting as a maker. Soup.
Okay. Very happy to be here. First of all, who I am. I'm an ambassador. Basically, I moved 4 years ago from Italy. I'm from Barolo, from Piedmont, but I work for a couple of Italian wineries here in New York, and one of them is Podere Castorani. So I'm very happy to be here and talk about this important winery in Abruzzo. And Podere Castorani has a long history behind, because basically it dates back 1793. It was one of the first and big wineries that started to make wine in the region, but as always happened in that, sometimes. So basically the property was abandoned after basically a battle between different areas. So when the property was abandoned for a long time, and what's happened? Happened that a Formula 1 racer, which is who is called Jarno Trulli, and who is from Alagno. Alagno is the town where the winery is based, it's basically close to Pescara. Basically, at the end of his career, he decided to invest money in this territory and to bring back to life that big property. So he bought it and he completely restored it. Due to his, thanks to his team of engineers, in Formula 1, they built a very big new and modern facility, and they start to make once again and performing a completely organic certified wine. The wines we have here in this market are from Podere Castorani are four. We have Quecodino, we have a Cerasuolo, the Abruzzo, we have a Montepulciano, and we have also this one that you are drinking now, which is a Reserve. It's a Montepulciano Reserva Catania 2015. The wine world in Abruzzo changed a lot and grew during the past few years, and especially during the last 30 years. Think about the fact that the Pecorino, for example, has been brought back to life with a DOC appellation 30 years ago, when Podere Castorani started to make it again. The wine that you're drinking is 100% Montepulciano from the area around Alagno and in the Pescara province. As Susannah said before, it's true, because also when I went there, the owner, told me that it's very easy in that part of the region, going to ski in the morning and having the aperitivo on the beach in the evening. So saying that means that there is a very particular climate and weather condition. We have the warm breeze from the sea, but we have at the same time the Magella and the Apennino chain that basically is like a wall that prepares the area from the cold winter. What makes this wine very particular? First of all, the fact that it's a late harvest. So Montepulciano is generally harvested in October, but in this case, to make this wine, the harvest took place the first week of November, when we have a lot of sugar and more aroma and flavor in the grape that help the wines to have this kind of complexity and also a little high alcohol content. And then is the way that we make it. We have a very long screen fermentation, over 24-30 days of skin fermentation to extract all the color and the aroma, and then we have a very long aging. When I say long, I mean about 12 months in oak, followed by 6 months in stainless steel barrel, and followed again about 15 months in bottle before being released. And the other thing that you can see on the label, on the bottle, and on your menu is the fact that it's called Riserva Casale. Riserva because it's aged for more than 24 months. It's the minimum that the law requires to be called Riserva, and Casale because it's one of the subzones of the area of Pescara. That is so interesting because that shows how this area is growing and trying to make wines as its best and give a single denomination for each area of the region, trying to fix all the best of the region of the area in a label. In this case, Casale is famous to have a very rich soil, clay, marl, and sand.
It's really good.
In a good
But it's got a lot of fun.
And so they're very different from our denomination. Okay? So, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for listening to my thick accent. Sorry for that. And enjoy the wine.
I didn't know that it was run by a Formula One racer, so we have a bunch of different kinds of Italian things here, right? Soccer, Formula One, so that's great. And they also have a lot of these old cement vats in this winery, so that's very exciting, I think. And I just wanted to talk about, for a second, the harvest, because you're tasting a 2017 and a 2015. So 2017, in terms of the harvest, which is the wine number 5, was hot and dry. There was frost in the spring, and then spring, summer, and fall saw really high temperatures. So 2017 was a pretty hot vintage. And each producer, it depends how they work their hot vintage, meaning how well they're able to handle the grapes that come in from such a hot vintage. The harvest was earlier than usual, and it rained late in the season, which does help Montepulciano, which is a very late ripening grape. So that's the 2017 harvest. The 2015 harvest, on the other hand, was a very good to outstanding year. They had spring rains, the summer was kind of warm and rain-free. There's some stress on the vineyards, but generally it was harvest that was a little earlier than other years, and it's a very good year for reds, both here in Abruzzo and also in Montalcino. So I just wanted to mention those two things. Wines, and then we're going to move to France, but we're going to be finishing our time in Abruzzo with these last two wines. In 2009, and these wines have a little bit of a higher level of sugar than you might see in other wines. So you are pouring them? Yeah. So we're tasting 3. So I want you to think of these wines from Bordeaux that can be paired with a dessert, or it could be paired with cheese, or it could be paired with spicy foods, or many other things. I'm sure Joyce and Melissa can come up with some great recipe suggestions, and Sylvia, all chefs, and people who are great at pairing. The sweet Bordeaux comes from an area of Bordeaux between the 2 rivers, so the Garonne and the Citron, and the Entre-deux-Mers appellation. And there are 8 AOCs here. I'm not going to mention all of them. We are going to be tasting wines from 2 of them, well, 3 of them really, but Cadillac and Lupiac, and they're on the Côte de Bordeaux. I was a Francophile before I became an Italophile. So my first love was 100% France, and then I went on this trip to Italy, and I saw all these amazing Italians, and So Cadillac is the first wine that we're tasting, and it's an AOC that was created in 1972 in the heart of the Première Côte de Bordeaux. And it's a sweet wine that comes from the hillsides on the right bank of the Garonne. And everything is very highly regulated, and these are bust-sized grapes. So every grape is selected individually, and this is the first wine that we're tasting. It's called Puy du Chêne, which means oak. So there's some oak on this, and this is the family. I love this picture of them, and this is 100% Semillon, this wine. And these are very old vines, actually, so they're about 60 years old, and everything is hand sorted, and this spends 12 months in oak barrels. and it's David Garab. And I think this is a really beautiful version of a sweet wine of Bordeaux. It's a 2019. We know about the 2019 vintage because I spoke about it before. But these are interesting wines that you could pair in different ways. Perhaps it's a little strange after all of these Abruzzo wines that we've tasted, but perhaps it's pleasant, palate cleansing. So we are tasting 3 wines from Sweet Bordeaux. And then we have wine number 2 from Sweet Bordeaux, which is from the Chateau Fayet. And it's a Première Côte de Bordeaux, and it's a 2019. And this is a blend of 70% Semillon and 30% Sauvignon Blanc. So now we kind of see what the addition of Sauvignon Blanc does to one of these sweeter wines. And this is a very old estate, which was mentioned for the first time in 1711. This is, the family is called the Medeville family, and they have a very large property, so they have 85 hectares, and they've been making wine since 1826, so a long, proud tradition of making sweet, bottle-sized wines. The vineyards are south-facing, and the soils in all of these vineyards that we're tasting are kind of, a variety of clay and gravel, and they have a different plantings here, but I guess my larger point is these are all kind of these 3 white grape varieties, a different blend, a different mixture, bottle-sized grapes. And while these are not so termed, these are equally, I think, prestigious sweet wines that you can think about for a different place on your table, and at a very different price point.
They thought they were too good for me. Yeah.
So I hope that you enjoy this
decided to leave
the
Sweet Bordeaux.
Really? And the third wine that we're tasting is from Lupiac, and it's primarily made from Semillon, and as we know, again, noble rot and these grapes. And in terms of Lupiac, it's about 40 kilometers south of Bordeaux. These are gravelly, chalky soils, and only wines in this very small appellation can be called Lupiac. So this is a 2017 vintage. The other 2 were the 2019 vintage. It's a small-ish property of 26 hectares. They have clay and limestone soils. This is again a blend. So 90% Semillon and 10% Sauvignon. Again, older vines, so 45 years. Hand-picked again, and I love the fact that they comment on how these wines are real alchemy between the fruit, the sugar, and the acidity. And I think that's true of all of these sweet wines. This sort of balancing act that they all try to play between this mix of different, not only varieties, but what they're looking for. So if it's acidity, a little bit of sweetness, and the alcohol and the sugar all blended together. I'm sorry that these come at the end of this whole explanation about Abruzzo, because I could speak about sweet wine in Bordeaux for 45 minutes to an hour, and I know how much Nana and I love sweet wines. I'm a huge sweet wine fan. I love sweet wines because I have a sweet tooth. Because I think they have a real place at the table.
Thank you. What do you, when you're sitting at home chilling, which you don't have time to do, what do you pair your sweet wine with?
Well, if I had any time to chill at home between my jobs and my 7-year-old, I would be chilling with some sweet wine and cheese.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Or nuts.
Okay.
Cheeses.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Cheese or nuts. That's just the cheese, no crackers, no honey, no chutney, no mixtures, no anything. But that is what I would have with sweet wine. Well, you were in, you went to, did you go to visit the
I was
area?
just there in September, and I visited Fayou. Incredible family. Been making wines for like
Forever.
200 years.
Right, exactly.
Beautiful property.
I think they're on like their 177th vintage.
But what was really cool is we did like an Asian food pairing with wine. Like we did Japanese food paired like right from appetizers all the way through desserts, and it was fantastic. The Japanese.
Yeah, no, that's kind of the food that I think would pair best with these wines. Apart from
It was a
with-
blend of like a spicy Japanese, and it was really great. We had a great time. I loved all the wines. I loved all the wines. I really came away with a different impression. Different impression in the sense you don't need to spend a lot. You don't need to spend dechem and like you don't need to spend those prices. Like these were all like $15 bottles.
Exactly a year ago with Melissa and Johnny, I put together 8 different saltines and bar side across the world. And I did 8 different blue cheeses from France, Italy, United States, and then maybe another country. And I thought it was just amazing, the pairing. I did a little video on it, just kind of ran through the 8 wines and then went back and did 8 different blue cheeses, as I mentioned. And just a couple of things about sweet wines from Bordeaux. As a category, probably they're the longest lived wines made in the world. And I'm not dismissing Tokai, okay, just be fair. But anyone would be hard pressed to put any red wine in the world up against the longevity of what Sauternes, Barsac, and these lesser-known regions, Lupiac, Cadillac, et cetera, are capable of doing. I mean, I've had 30 and 40-year-old Lupiac, I've had 30 and 40-year-old Cadillac, and they were absolutely amazing. And what's the magic? It's the acidity. And what really happens, talking about how can you love these wines, is the freshness. The freshness, they leave your mouth crystal clear, and if you just wait literally 1 minute, you don't have any cloyiness in your mouth, and you're ready to come back for more. And of course, I'm not going to sell this program to everyone, but if you love acid the way I love acid, then boom.
So we've come to the end of our wine selection here. Thank you, and happy holidays!
This has been another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. Thanks for listening. If you have suggestions on what topics you would like me to discuss, please reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Exploring the Wine Glass. I am also on LinkedIn as Lori Hoytbud. Of course, you can always email me at exploringthewineglass@gmail.com. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find me more easily. And most importantly, tell your wine-loving friends, because if you like the podcast, they will too. Music is Wine by Kevens. Until next week, Sláinte!
Tempranillo on the lovely Barolo. You are special, so very, very special. You are so special. You